Welcome back to the Hip Replacement Podcast. I'm Chris Bystriansky, your host. I'm also a double hip replacement patient, more than 10 years out from one and more than 12 years out from the other. And I'm here to share my experiences with you. So let's go. I went out for a walk the other morning, and I'm in Florida, in Central Florida in the US. And it was pretty brisk out. It was about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 10 degrees Celsius. And that feels pretty cool for me, but I like the change. Normally it's 80 degrees, 90 degrees, and it just cooled off. Like winter or fall got here overnight, it seemed. And I'll enjoy it for a little while, maybe a week, but then I'll be yearning for that 80 or 90 degrees again. So I love the heat, but it's nice to get out when it's a little brisk once in a while. But a week is about all I can take, but I'll get through it. Anyway, the walk was no big deal. It was just a few miles, and honestly, I feel once in a while it just comes back to me that how far I've come, because I remember when a few miles was absolutely a monumental deal. I mean, I remember not being able to walk 10 feet. And then as I was getting better after the surgeries, maybe a 5 or 10 minute walk was a big deal. And then, eventually it got to be where years later, it got to be, miles were not a big deal. But, I didn't know if that was ever going to be possible again. But now it just seems to be, it's just a striking difference how years after the surgery, how easy it is to tack on mileage, and then it's just no big deal. So if you're struggling, it's know that it's going to get better. It may seem difficult at first, your first few weeks, your first few months, and maybe even your first year, but know that it's going to get better. So hang in there, and we'll talk a lot on this podcast about things that you can do to help it move along and just to get better in your recovery. And I know there are a lot of people out there struggling. Every once in a while, I will pop into different Facebook groups that I'm a member of, and I don't really post, but I read some of the things, and I see people are struggling. There are a lot of questions and uncertainty. I don't comment much because I'd be there all day, and honestly, my heart breaks for a lot of these people. I think that's why I put together this podcast, because I can do more good on this podcast, getting out a message and helping people rather than commenting in those groups. So if you're in those groups, if you participate in the free public Facebook groups or whatever groups, and you read that people are struggling, send them a positive comment or give them a heads up about this podcast. If you find this helpful, you may just change someone's life, because maybe they hear something on this podcast. They come here and they hear something on this podcast that is really important or motivating for them at the time. All right. So share and be positive. We're kind of all in this together, even though we're all over the world. Anyway, I was out golfing a few weeks ago. All right, let's be honest. I golf a few times each week, but this particular thing happened to me a few weeks ago. I was on the first tee, and I got paired with this couple, this husband and wife, and they were not very good. All right. And they were between 50 and 60 years old, and they were at least 50 pounds overweight. And where I usually golf, everybody walks, and it's about a 3-mile walk for 9 holes. So I was actually pretty inspired that they were even out there to begin with doing the walk. All right. They were beginner golfers, very overweight, and they were out there doing it. And on the first tee, they admitted that they were not good and that they were just starting. And just in the first few swings, it was pretty obvious that the husband was bad and the wife was even worse. And that's totally okay, because we all started somewhere. And I remember being a beginner golfer. This one time when I was 9 years old, 9 or 10 or 11, I don't know, way a long time ago, I was playing and I was on my fourth hole. It was a 9-hole course. I was on the fourth hole and I was taking a practice swing. And on my practice swing, I accidentally hit my ball, and it went straight sideways and it went into a lake. All right. So the tip of my club hit the ball on accident and it shot off sideways into a nearby lake. And I was so embarrassed because that was the last ball in my bag. I had to go and ask the people I was playing with if I could use a ball. And it all worked out because I finished the hole with their ball, and then by the green, there were bushes, and I found a couple of other balls in the bushes. So I made it through the round, but it was so embarrassing to take a practice swing, and I hit the ball sideways into the lake, and it was the last ball in my bag. So anyway, we all start somewhere. And now when I go golf, I mean, I'll play the same round I'll play 5 rounds with the same ball. I just don't lose balls. So that's very similar to the track that I was on with the hip recovery. I couldn't walk 5 feet, 10 feet, and now I just do miles without even thinking about it. And when I was starting golfing, I was hitting balls in the lake on accident, and now I use the same ball for 4 or 5 rounds frequently, right? So we all can come a long way. But anyway, when I play golf with somebody new, I really like to engage in interesting and engaging conversations. I don't really care how good or bad someone is at golf. But the one thing about me is that I do not ask shallow questions. I go deep. I go very deep, quick. So right there, before we even left the first tee, I asked them this question. What made you start playing golf at your ages? I didn't find that offensive. I thought that was a good question. And they weren't offended. And their answer was unbelievable. It was open, thoughtful, and pretty enlightening. They simply explained that they wanted to get more exercise, be outside more, and they had a lot of friends who golfed, and they wanted to spend more time with their friends, and they didn't want to be left behind. Meaning they didn't want their friends to spend less time with them than they spent with other people who knew how to golf. So they started playing golf to accomplish all those things. More exercise, more time outside, more time with friends. And they also explained that, I can't believe they were sharing all this based on that one question I asked. They also explained that they wanted to get better as quickly as possible. So they hired a coach to teach them, to give them lessons, and so that they would get better quicker, and that they were playing as often as possible for a month, which is a pretty short amount of time, so that they could ramp up their ability and get back to playing golf with their friends and spend more time with their friends. I thought all of that was brilliant. More exercise, more time with friends, more time outside. These are all key indicators of longevity, by the way. And what even went further for me, what really hit home, was that they hired someone to teach them so that they could condense the time it would take them to get better. It's amazing what you learn about people on the golf course. I've learned so many life lessons And I think maybe that's one of the reasons it's so attractive to me. And that not only is it exercise, not only is it a skill, but the social aspect of it and the learning about other people and what's going on in their life. And there's people from all over the world. I've played with people from all over the world. So many positives. But anyway, these people had a plan to get better at golf, and it was a great one. So let me ask you this. If you have a challenge in your life, maybe like a hip replacement, or you want to accomplish something, what's your plan? If you want to get better at something, get healthier, recover better from a hip replacement surgery, what's your plan? Simple. You have the surgery, maybe you do some initial physical therapy, and then you get shoved out into the world. What's the plan? What's the plan after that? I've certainly hired plenty of coaches to teach me very specific lessons to ramp up my experience and competence more quickly than I would have been able to by myself. I went to college, I went to law school, I went to business school, and then it seemed that I got out of all of that, and all that was great, but then I started hiring very, very specific coaches to teach me very specific things. And that's when my growth and my development really took off. After all that money spent on college and law school and business school, it was after that that things really started to take off for me because I hired coaches to teach me specific stuff. But after my hip replacements, I did plenty of physical therapy for about the first 3-4 months, formal physical therapy in the clinic with physical therapists. And then I went home after that, and I just continued physical therapy after that at home, and I do that still. But still, I was wandering around after I left the formal physical therapy. I was wandering around trying to figure things out. Why does this ache? Why does that ache? What's this pain? How can I do that? And I couldn't run back to the doctors or run back to the physical therapist about everything. So I had to figure stuff out. Yeah, I had the input from the surgeon and the physical therapist, but that could only get me so far. Once I was about 6 months out from surgery, their input really wasn't relevant anymore. Their expertise doesn't go that far out. So I felt like I was kind of on my own, just figuring stuff out. Well, in the past 12 years, I've learned a ton of things, and I'm sharing it here with you on this podcast. But there's so many more details, so much more information that I really can't get to in these podcasts. It would take me 10 years to just spill everything out. So I know people need help. I see it. I read it. People send me messages. I get it. So I created a separate experience for those of you who want more guidance and information on recovery. And the experience is called the New Hip Recovery Challenge. I invite you to join me there. There's a link to more information in the show notes. If you want a proven path to growth, both physical and mental, and you want to exceed your own expectations for recovery, this is it. This experience is it. Let me show you what's possible and then show you how to get there. Just go to the show notes and click on the link and you'll learn more about the New Hip Recovery Challenge. So as you're going through your recovery, be like this couple I met on the golf course. Know what you want. Have a goal. Develop a plan. Get help from someone with experience, someone who has been in your shoes, so that you can not only succeed, but you can also condense the time it takes to get you there. I hope this was helpful. Develop that plan and get help. And I think those couple things will take you a long way so that you can have a great long-term recovery. Not only initial recovery, I read a lot of people feel good that day of surgery, could be the drugs, but then in the weeks after they feel miserable, and then it takes them a long time to start feeling better again. And they kind of go, they feel good, they feel bad, they feel good, they feel bad. And it's this roller coaster. But have a plan, get help, and take some action. I hope this was helpful, and you can do this. Thank you so much for tuning into the Hip Replacement Podcast. Until next time, I wish you the best recovery possible. Take care.